You are watching Persistence Works Television Network, PWTN, founded by Dr. Paul and Vincent, preacher, teacher, and prolific author of the popular Persistence Works book series, broadcasting the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ from El Paso, Texas to the world, and bringing you into God's presence. Experience the difference. You'll never be the same. Don't just watch TV, watch Persistence Works Television Network, PWTN.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's show. This is a blessed day, and I want to welcome you to this special edition of Global Politics Today. I am your host, Bishop Paul Vincent. Hey, this is a program that we have put together to be able to enlighten us as believers and as Christians especially, but generally just anyone, no matter your religion, to be able to be in the know of what's happening in the global affairs politically, and to be able to look at nations and cities and states to get to know what's happening. Sometimes we do get to talk with government officials or even military officers. But today's show is a solo show. I'm going to be talking about Brics. In case you don't know what's Brics, just stay tuned because we have a lot to learn today to know where the world is going and what's about to happen in our world, even as it's happening. So once again, I want to welcome you to this show. This is Global Politics Today. We are focusing on Brics, and it's brought to you by Persistence Works TV Network. We are streaming on 14 different platforms from our TV network, PWTN, Persistence Works TV Network. We are streaming on Roku, on Fire TV, on Apple TV. We are streaming on our two apps, our Android app, our iPhone app. We are also streaming on our website, persistentworks.tv, and we are streaming on all the leading social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, our two Facebook pages, Twitter, LinkedIn, everything in between. So wherever you're watching us from, I welcome you today, and I want to thank God for your life because I know you are going to be blessed. Help me share this video, especially if you're watching on social media. Help me share it. Copy the link, share in your page, share in groups you belong to, because it's going to be an eye-opener to somebody. And also, if you're watching us on our TV network, just invite somebody to watch. And by the way, this will be available as video on demand after this show. So once again, I'm your host, Bishop Paul Vincent. Now, let's get to the point. So we are talking about Brics today. And for those of you who don't know, who are not maybe aware of what's happening in our world, what is Brics? Brics is the acronym for a couple of nations that came together to form this bloc. It stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Originally, South Africa wasn't part of it, but they later brought them in. So they became known as the Brics: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, before I really get into talking about the Brics and what they stand for and what they are trying to achieve, we need to take a pull back to have a backdrop of what even led to they wanted to form this bloc of nations, organization, and what they are trying to achieve or accomplish. Now, before this, the preamble to this will be an introduction, so to speak, of what I call the unipolar world order. In case you don't know, and in case you are not aware of what it is, you and I have been living in a unipolar world almost as far as you've been born. I don't know how old you are watching this, but you know, for almost the past half century or more, we've been living in a unipolar world order. Now, what is unipolar? Let me give you a dictionary definition of what it is. In international politics and systems, a unipolar world order is a distribution of power in which, note this, only one state dominates the affairs, the economic, social, cultural, military, and influence over the globe. Let me read that again. It's a distribution of power in which only one state dominates the economic, social, cultural, and military influence over the globe. So what do we mean by the fact that we've been living in a unipolar world order, world system? It means that one world power, so to speak, the USA, or you say the Western world, which includes Britain, France, Germany, and all of those. So we can often use the Western world in a sense, or we can often use the USA. Now, it controls in unipolar world system, the one state that is in charge, so to speak, controls or dominates every sphere, economic. Now, Do you know that everything about the economy of this world is run under a unipolar world system? What does that mean? That means that your finance sector, your banking system, everything is run and operated under a unipolar, under a one system that controls. If they say you live, you live. If they say you die, you die. And that is primarily controlled through an organization called the SWIFT. In case you've not heard of the SWIFT, SWIFT stands for Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. Now, it powers most of the money transfer transactions, bank transactions. If you are in Africa, maybe in Ghana, in Nigeria, and you are sending money to Europe, if you're in US, if you are wiring money to, UK, to France, anywhere in the world, the SWIFT system is the main medium that kind of powers, controls, runs the whole thing. And that means that if you are outside of this system, although if you are outside of the system, like some banks, you may still function, but you are regulated, you are controlled by it. And the other power of this is that the SWIFT system is used to impose economic sanctions on nations. For instance, Iran or Russia, when they don't do the bidding of the unipolar, unipolar world order, the powers that be, when they cross their path, they do what they don't want, they impose sanctions. When they impose economic sanctions, that means they can't transfer money using the bank system because it's controlled by SWIFT and they call the shot. So it's as if you are shut out of the world. Those nations are shut out of the world economic system. And that hurts their economy. That's one of the greatest tools, I would say, the US or the Western world has against any of these nations, short of the military, because you can literally bring an economy to a halt, of a nation to a halt. It also controls a lot of other sectors that we won't be able to get into. But the thing is, the economic dominance is, the SWIFT is a predominant tool that the Western world or the USA uses to dominate economically. Now, it also mentioned military. Now, you see, the military influence of the US is undisputably the most powerful. The US, let me just give you two quick facts about the US military. The US spends, like in this year, we call it FY, fiscal year. This fiscal year 2023, the budget for the US military is $1.77 trillion with a T. $1.77 trillion. That is a budget for. There are countries that don't have or spend up to that for the whole country, but that is a budget for the US military. The US military has over 750 bases around the world. 750. So undisputably, the US is the dominant military power around the world. I mean, countries like China, Russia are trying to catch up, but they are still far behind. So what does that tell you? The unipolar world order, the US military runs the show, and it's undisputable. I know that there are many other nations that have been trying to, play catch up, but it's going to be a while. Now, not only that, culturally, you see, and the thing is that whatever it is they choose to do or decide to do, the unipolar world system is as if everybody agrees. Look at the media. They control the media. Whatever narrative they want the media, the story you hear to be, that's whichever channel you turn to, it's as if they all got the memo. And whatever they want to agree on, whatever they want to say, you can hardly hear a dissecting view because they are all part of or controlled by the same system. Culturally, the same thing. Have you seen the things they are trying to push down? Like, for instance, an African country may say, hey, you know what, we want marriage between a man and a woman. And then you see the powers that be, the Western world, led by the US. And of course, because US in recent years has become more liberal and more have adopted policies that I'm not exactly sure how to put it, but are like almost setting a wrong example. And when some nations say, you know what, we don't want to follow your example, hey, they hit them with a fine, they hit them with sanctions, they withdraw support and what have you. So that is what happens when you have a unipolar world where one state calls the shot, or one bloc, the Western world, calls the shot, or the Western nations calls the shot, and you agree, fine. If you don't agree, you are in trouble. And this has been the case. So from the economic to the social to the cultural to the military influence. They dominate in every area. So you see a situation where some nations are trying to do their own thing or just live by their own rules. If you don't play by the playbook of the powers that be, the unipolar, the guys that control, the nations that control the world order, you will be in trouble. Now, this has been the case. Many nations have had. I mean, you can't really fight them, because you try to fight them, you have yourself to blame, because wherever you go. And another thing I should have mentioned, under the economic dominance, bodies like IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, they are all part of the tools they use to control, to impose sanctions, to control, to affect the economies of nations. And I know in many nations, many developing nations especially, IMF will always come out, the World Bank, hey, you need to adopt austerity measure, you need to devalue currency, you need to do this, take out loan, to help your development, and you take out those loans and you can't pay back and you are stuck for life. And many countries, many African countries, many developing nations, they are paying the interest they are paying on the debt they owe to these organizations will take almost forever to pay, and servicing those debts affect how they run their country and what they are able to do with their resources. Now, that is a scheme, so to speak, of the unipolar world to keep many of these under check, under control. So what happens? At the end of the day, the economic, social, cultural, and military influence is dominated by one nation or one block of nations. So that is a summary of what it is to have a unipolar world, which we have been living in. Now, that brings me to the next point. Next thing I want to talk about. Now, as a result of this, a couple of these nations, which is China, Russia, India, Brazil, they all have, some have had, for instance, Russia have had, it has had its thing with the US for many years, with the West for many years. Now, the war happening in Ukraine has actually helped all of this. Because the Brics have started quite a couple of years ago, but in recent time, what's happened this August especially is what is making history to be made with these Brics. So let me give you a quick snapshot of what Brics has been or is all about. So I said that it represents, Brics stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Two of these nations, which is Russia and China, they are permanent members of the Security Council. When you are a permanent member of the UN Security Council, it means you have a voting right. You can veto now if they want to go fight a nation as a United Nations. The Security Council has to vote to say, hey, we're going to go fight this nation. If one nation that has a veto power votes and said no, UN can't do anything. I mean, the US can lead other allied forces, maybe Britain and France and all of those who will back them up to go and fight, but they can't go as United Nations, because once the Security Council votes, once a permanent member vetoes any of those kind of moves, that's the end. So these two guys are part of these two nations. They are part of these Brics. And what are they trying to achieve? Now, they had a conference just this past few weeks, last week, I think 24 to 26 or so of August. And in these, they now expanded their membership. They invited 6 other nations, namely Saudi Arabia, Argentina, UAE, which is United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Iran, and Ethiopia. They invited them to, come join them, be part of them, and those ones are now part of them, effective 1st January 2024. So there are 23 other nations that have applied, that are, a lot of nations are queuing up to be able to join, to be part of it. What are they doing? They are trying to provide an alternative to the unit. So in other words, we are trying to get into a multipolar world order. So they are not satisfied with the unipolar world order, whereby a country, US or the Western world, a block of countries, run the show, calls the show, tells them what to do, what not to do, and when they try to do their own thing, it won't work. Now, they are trying to create a multipolar world order. Now, a simple definition of this, once again, multipolar world order is a distribution of power in which more than 2 states have similar amount of power, economic, military, culturally, what have you. So more than 2 states now. So it's not just going to be the US, not just going to be the Western world, the Western powers, these are now block of nations that are now providing an alternative and trying to create a multipolar world order. Now, it's interesting now, it gets interesting because by reason of the 6 additional members they have, let me give you a breakdown of this. They now have 37% of the global economy. Now, when you add the original, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, then you add Saudi Arabia, Argentina, UAE, Egypt, Iran, and Ethiopia. They have a combined 37% of the global economy. Think of that. They also have 46% of the world population. That means almost half of the world population is under their belt. And they control, listen to this, they control 80% of the world oil production. That means that when you talk of oil, I mean, they even beat OPEC to it. 80% of the world oil production falls within these nations. And let me give you a quick breakdown. I'm going to play you a video before I continue this discussion. I'm going to play a video that gives more insight and talks about this, in a couple of ways, and then I'll come back to this. But before then, let me give a quick summary of the GDP of these nations, the BRICS members, the old and the new members, their GDP, because that tells you that, I mean, their GDP is 30 times more than US GDP or the West GDP combined. China has a GDP of 19.37 trillion with a T, trillion dollars. India has a GDP of $3.74 trillion. Brazil has a GDP of $2.08 trillion. Russia has a GDP of $2.06 trillion with a T, mind you. South Africa has a GDP of 339 billion with a B dollars. Mind you, these are all in US dollars. Now, for the new members that have joined, the 6 new members, Saudi Arabia has a GDP of $1.06 trillion. And we all know that they are the most powerful oil country in the world. Argentina has a GDP of $641 billion with a B, billion dollars. UAE has a GDP of $499 almost $500 billion. Egypt has a GDP of $387 billion. Iran has a GDP of $367 billion, and Ethiopia has a GDP of $156 billion. Now, all of these put together, they control 37% of the global economy. That's not a joke. So, as we get more into this, to have more discussion, to throw more light for you to get to understand what's happening, and a guy put together actually 15 ways in which BRICS is going to change the world.
You are watching Persistence Works Television Network, PWTN.
Brics group has no headquarters, no rule book, no procedures, no membership application process, but it's already changing the world. I've been talking to financial experts about the group, whose biggest members are India and China. Here are 15 things you need to know. Number 1, for the first time, the US is set to lose its rich guy advantage over the rest of the world, as an expanded BRICS would immediately have a GDP 30% larger than the United States and a much faster rate of growth. Number 2, for the first time, America's oil advantages will be lost, as an expanded BRICS would control 60% of global oil reserves. Number 3, for the first time, a single cooperative group of people will control the majority of critical minerals that the world now needs. Now, America has ordered its businesses and those of certain nations to stop selling high-end chips that China needs for general development, not military development, but general development, as US scholars have confirmed. America's not playing a nice game there. BRICS could play America's game, but with critical minerals instead. Number 4, for the first time, an international body would have a genuine mandate to speak for the people of the world. The 5 core members of Brics already contain more than 40% of humanity, and there's a huge queue of countries lining up to join, including Indonesia, another one of the world's biggest countries by population. In comparison, the US has elected itself the world's policeman with just 4% of the global population. And in a related point, NATO has suggested itself as a global security body. But all the NATO countries put together have only about 13% of the world's population. Brics is already, before its new members join, 3 times the size of NATO. Number 5, for the first time, the people of the world have a chance to fix a massive problem. The global economic order is horribly distorted by the dominance of the US currency system. This has been a matter of frustration for decades. It was revealed this morning that 15 countries have applied to join the China-led New Development Bank, which is fighting for a fairer financial system for all of us. Number 6, for the first time, a non-Western grouping dominated by Asia has prospective applicants who are rich, such as Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and sizable in population and economic terms, such as Indonesia, Nigeria, Mexico. This makes the Brics big enough to make a difference in global policies and in influence and in UN voting. Number 7, for the first time there's a chance to replace US groups which present themselves as international organisations, such as the World Bank and the IMF. You can replace them with actual international organisations, ones which genuinely serve the people of the world. The US and the UK recently blocked an international proposal to reform the global financial system, insisting that US-run bodies, the World Bank and the IMF, retain their power. Number 8, for the first time there's a chance for the world to develop an alternative to SWIFT, the West's money transfer system, and replace it with a genuinely free and politically independent global bank transfer system that works for the people of the planet. Number 9, for the first time there's an opportunity for poorer countries to stand together against the West's unfair and rather gratuitous deployment of unilateral sanctions and secondary sanctions. Now, these cause enormous harm to the innocent and have done for many, many decades. Number 10, for the first time there'll be a body big enough to halt illegitimate actions favoured by certain Western countries, such as the seizing of other nations' assets, the freezing of other nations' bank accounts, the snatching of other nations' oil, and so on. Number 11, for the first time, discussion of the healthy growth of countries and the international economy will be free of the distorting Western lens. What is clear is there is a multiplicity of discussions on development and investment issues, and these conversations no longer all flow through a Western lens. That's what Sir Danny Alexander, a former British government minister, told the Financial Times this week. Number 12, for the first time there will be a body big enough to point out that the imaginary rules-based order is the exact geopolitical equivalent of the emperor's new clothes. That much quoted list of rules doesn't actually exist. The people who keep using it as a verbal weapon, no, it doesn't exist. The people attacked by it, no, it doesn't exist. But who's there on the global stage who is big enough to say that? Now, finally, there'll be a body big enough to call out the US, which is far and away the worst behaved of all the superpowers. The US has refused to sign and or ratify at least 40 international agreements. Yep, I said 40, not 14, 40. And to sum up what I'm saying, consider this. For the first time, there'll be a body big enough to say no. No to a world where humanity's hopes for global peace are jettisoned, because peace is not the preferred choice of the military-industrial complex. No to the promotion of a system of governance where leaders insist it's right to spend more on guns and the military than you spend on healthcare. No to a world where people cynically weaponize concepts like human rights and democracy and freedom to demonize developing nations. And above all, no to a world where one country has to be first, has to be exceptional, has to be number one, has to be ahead of all other countries, just because that country says so.
We must be number one in the world to lead the world in the 21st century. It's a simple proposition.
That's just wrong, and we all know it's wrong. Now we have a chance to build a better world, a fairer world, a safer world, a multipolar world. And that's why Brics meetings are so important, my friends, because those are the moments when everything changes.
Saudi Arabia, the oil-rich Middle Eastern nation, has officially submitted its application to join the Brics alliance, according to a report by Bloomberg. This move signifies Saudi Arabia's intent to challenge the supremacy of the US dollar as the global reserve currency. Anil Suklal, the South African Brics ambassador, has confirmed that 4 other Middle Eastern countries, namely the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Egypt, and Algeria, have also expressed their interest in joining the bloc. These countries, known for their significant oil exports to the Western world, currently settle their transactions in US dollars. Discussions are underway regarding Saudi Arabia's potential funding of the Brics Bank, also known as the New Development Bank. If the Brics alliance accepts Saudi Arabia's financial contribution, it could mark the beginning of a new era of financial dominance, as the oil-rich nation would provide a constant cash flow to the bloc. Consequently, the US dollar's position as the global reserve currency would face a formidable challenge.
Our country's going to hell, and we're not going to be the big bar. We have power, but it's waning. In fact, it's waning in terms of our currency. And I'm not just talking about the value of our currency. I'm talking about our currency being used throughout the world.
You want it to remain. You want the dollar to remain the world's reserve currency.
Well, I think it's bigger than losing any war. I think if it doesn't, look, we are already reverting to third world status in many ways. You look at our airports, you look at our terminals, you look at our filthy roads and broken roads and everything else. We're like a third world country. We have something that's very powerful, and that's our dollar all over. But you take a look at what's happening to it now with other countries not using it. And you know China wants to replace it with the yuan. And it was unthinkable with us. Unthinkable. Would never have happened. Now people are thinking about it. That could happen.
floor of the New York Stock Exchange today, and I asked the traders their thoughts on the Brics countries coming together to create one centralized currency to replace the US dollar as the world reserve currency. And they literally laughed at me. About 90% of the foreign exchange transactions involve the US dollar. It absolutely dominates. Yeah, but Taylor, the Brics countries are going to back their currency with gold. Good luck backing your currency with gold that the US owns 2 times as much as all of the Brics countries combined. And yeah, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, they're going to be able to make unanimous economic decisions. Okay, even if this was a legit thought.
All right, welcome back. Well, you're watching Global Politics today, Global Politics, and today we are focusing on the BRICS. Now, this is a show, a TV program that we bring to you on Persistent Works TV network, where we look at different nations of the world and we look at different cities of states, focusing on one nation or one state at a time to know what's going on in those nations and their policies and how that impacts our world or even its role even in end times. Now, today we are dealing with the BRICS, and if you watch that video, those video clips, you will agree with me. There are different dimensions to this whole thing. Now, while I'm not really kind of like agreeing with everything that the guy that listed 15 ways it will change the world. Now, we don't even know how this will turn out, if it will be a success to exactly do what they plan to do, or if it would be just one of those ambitious goals and dreams that strange bedmates will never even be able to get together. Only God knows all those details, but there are things I want to bring to your attention. I want to address as a result of this video, and as we continue this discussion. Number one is the dollarization of the economy, world economy. US doesn't joke with the fact that the world trades in US dollars. And you can hear President Trump right there in that interview pointing it out. You can also hear Joe Biden talking about the fact that US has to be number one. I mean, America doesn't joke with, doesn't apologize for that. And I'm not here to say that's right or wrong. Being an American myself and the US military, and I thank God for the US military, for the US as a nation. I thank God for all that God has used them to accomplish over the years. Of course, there are many things that they have done as a nation that has not been exactly good or perfect. But you see, there are many areas in which US have helped to really stabilize and make the world to be a more peaceful place. And you may disagree with that. And there are many areas, of course, where we know that they've also caused more trouble. And there's always two sides of the coin. So, but that's not the purpose of this. I'm not here to defend us or the US also. But the truth is that they have been the unipolar world and have controlled the unipolar world order that we have all been and lived in over the years. But the reality is that countries like China, Russia, especially, and then maybe Saudi Arabia, Iran, they are not happy with that status, and they are not happy with the fact that dollar has so much power that they have to pay for the oil they sell or they buy or anything they buy in dollars. Do you know that many of the wars that have been fought, of course, there may be the aspect of terrorism and all of that, but at the back, at the base, at the root of most wars have been the fact that oil and dollar have been at play. The heart of some of the wars, Iraq war, even Libya war, because these are wars or nations that, but left for themselves, they were planning to have an alternative to the dollar in selling their oil. Iraq and Libya especially. And now US doesn't joke with that. So when you try to replace the dollar and that plan goes far, it seems as if the US has a way of wanting to stop it by all means. But we will live to see how this plays out. We don't know how this all will play out. But the fact that the BRICS now control 37% of the global economy, they control 80%. I read 80%, even though the guy on the video says 60%, whatever it is, between 60 and 80% of the world oil production. That means that it may not be business as usual. If they get along well and their plans succeed over time, if you watch that draft, that breakdown of the forecast that played in that video, you will see that by year 2028, the BRICS versus G7, you will see that there's going to be so much disparity that already the the BRICS is already overtaking G7 or even G20. But by 2028, there's going to be a clear dichotomy. It's going to be so clear. The margin is going to be so wide because they have the population, they have the oil economy. I mean, talking of BRICS, they have the population, they have the oil economy. And mind you that, and they have the population, they have the global economy. I mean, 37%. Mind you that there are other nations that have queued up, that have put in application. 22 or 23 nations already are on standby. So by early next year, maybe many of them may be accepted, and that will mean that they may be the biggest bloc among other, world bodies that have different interests. So the issue of the dollar is a key reason, I believe, why they are trying to come together. And we know China has had, this is another takeaway from this whole thing. BRICS might have a lot of nations involved, but looking at it objectively, it also seems as if it's China's game plan for world dominance and to overtake the US. China, of course, Russia. Now, we'll get to Russia later. China is not happy with the fact that US is the world power, controls the world economy in a lot of sense. The dollar, everything is in dollar. They have worked tirelessly for years to overtake that, to change that. So BRICS may now be the platform on which they are able to do that. Because if that succeeds, that means that the world is not going to be trading in US dollars as much as it is now. It's not going to be the global reserve currency. I mean, you can see the concern that world leaders, President Trump and President Biden, you can see the two key propositions or points and concern they raise. That is a typical America. America wants to remain number one. America wants the dollar to remain number one. And the global, the heart of the world economy. And you see the guy also in that video that was that the guys in Wall Street are literally laughing and like, hey, you know what? They can keep dreaming. So it's true that some of these guys don't think it's something that will happen today, but maybe the groundwork is already being laid for dollar to be dethroned. So I wouldn't think they should really dismiss this with a wave of hand, because guess what? Nothing lasts forever. Once upon a time, the Roman Empire ruled and controlled the world and dominated the world for many years. But guess what? Not only if you read the Bible, if you read history, there have been kingdoms that have come and gone, and there have been rise and fall of empires, of kingdoms, and what have you. So nothing is impossible in this life, So I would think that the US should get its act together, and that starts from having the right leadership. When you have the wrong leadership, a lot of these things, in fact, it can get even worse. The days of US glory and US power and dominance may be over. The days of the Western powers and their dominance and their control of the third world may be over. BRICS seem to be providing an alternative for that to happen. So China's desire for world dominance and to be able to overtake the US seem to have found an expression through the BRICS. We will live to see to know if this will work out as planned, but we never know. Now, the other aspect about this is the Ukraine war and Russia. Now, if you follow global politics, world politics, you will know that this thing has been in the making for a long time, because through NATO is not Atlantic Treaty Organization. This was the body that, after the Second World War, that US and the Western world put together that say, hey, you know what, we'll kind of be like a police to checkmate any dictator or any nation that wants to, be a pain in the neck in our world. And US, I would say, is NATO. US funds it militarily, financially, and all that. Most of the European nations that are part of NATO, they don't really do much, which was why when President Trump was in office, he pushed them, he pressured them to step up to do more, contribute more resources, more, military-wise. Because most of the European nations don't pay attention to their military, they don't pay attention to all of that. So US, I would say, has been the backbone of NATO. So when Russia under Putin sees NATO encroaching near its territory, now it's not comfortable. Russia is not comfortable having NATO, which by extension US, to be at its backyard. And I think where they miss it over the years in the foreign policy of the US and NATO and most of Europe, they will have really had a situation where they are able to look at, pay attention to Russia's concern, but they didn't. And in trying to have a NATO base, which is by extension a US military base in Poland, in Ukraine, I mean, it's like they are coming closer home. They are getting to their backyard. And Russia don't trust these guys. Russia feels like it's been threatened, and it's war with Ukraine. It's all about control and dominance, because they feel if NATO comes, or NATO or US comes under its nose, its own survival is at risk. Now, all of this led to the war in Ukraine. While there are other political issues involved on that tune, but this is the heart of it. Russia doesn't want NATO, US in its backyard, and US and Russia wants to be in his backyard, so as to checkmate them more. And so if anything happens, they are able to take them out. This has been the bone of contention. While Ukraine is the scapegoat, so to speak, but at the end of the day, you see that there is something bigger playing out here. It's all about control. It's all about dominance, which goes back to the unipolar world order, whereby the Western world, led by the US, wants to have and remain in control of everything, every area, that every nation, you either agree with them or you are taken out. Now, Russia now sees Brics as an opportunity. So not only China has its own agenda, Russia also now sees Brics as an alternative, a bloc that he can use to checkmate the West. In other words, mind you, remember that Russia has also been sanctioned. Of course, Iran has been sanctioned. Other countries in the past has been sanctioned when you don't do the bidding of the unipolar world order, US, the Western powers. At the end of the day, Russia now sees the bloc, these Brics as an alternative, as a way by which they can actually fight back, so to speak. So that even if you sanction me, hey, you know what? I don't really care. Because now the new development bank they are setting up, if all things goes well, they won't really need the SWIFT anymore. They won't really need the Western banking system, because they will be able to do you can sanction them all they want. That doesn't affect them, because they are going to trade in their own currencies. They don't need the dollar no more. They are going to be able to use their own bank, new development bank, and their own system, an alternative to the SWIFT, to do whatever transactions and money transfers that your sanction won't have any effect on them. So in other words, the powers of the Western world or the US is going to be weakened to fight against the rogue nations, if I use the word rogue nation in quotes. And you see that the war has extended beyond Ukraine, Russia, because the whole of Europe is affected. You know that as the war started, they sanctioned Russia. And in sanctioning Russia, Russia fought back. Russia supplies Europe with over 40% of its energy. And I've always said to myself, Europe is in a situation where they are more concerned about global warming and not wanting to touch the environment, and yet they are drowning in a lot of areas whereby you have resources, you don't want to use it, but you want to get from somewhere else. Russia has been a major supplier of energy to Europe for years now. So this war have exposed Europe and their vulnerability, because Russia literally cut energy supply to them. In fact, some nations, a nation like Belgium, for instance, they literally, their parliament also, they kind of like pass a resolution that, hey, you know what? Because they were trying to sanction Russia. And one of them, I remember, said, we can't punish ourselves in the name of punishing somebody, because if you sanction him, Russia, at the end of the day, we will feel the burn the more, because much of their energy comes from there. And if Russia hits back, they are going to be in trouble. And already many of them are in trouble already. You can see energy costs and oil have skyrocketed across Russia. I know it's a global, everywhere around the world, energy price and gas price is up, but it's worse in Europe, because Russia have cut their supply of gas. In some cases have stopped. some cases have cut the supply of energy, of oil to many of those. So now they are looking for an alternative, which brings us to Africa. What's happening in Africa is not a coincidence. You see, Europe has an alternative to be able to get energy, oil, gas from Africa. We are in Africa, starting from Nigeria to nations like Niger, to nations like, all of those nations that have oil and are willing to export it. And that is where the politics shifts to Africa. By the way, as I speak today, a military coup took place in Gabon, another former French colony. So when you see this happening, so at the end of the day, Africa as a whole, especially Francophone Africa, somebody once asked me, what's Francophone? Francophone are those African nations that were colonized by France, Many of them have been, I did in our last global politics, we focused on Niger. And by extension, we did a video actually, and did have a discussion about how France have continued to colonize. There is this part on continuation of colonization of these former African colonies. So many of these guys, they have resources, yet they are in poverty and they are not enjoying their resources, and France is milking them. They even use the France's own currency. And France takes out $500 billion every year out of Africa. That's not right. That's injustice. That's wrong. So most of them have started waking up and are taking their own destinies, their own country back. Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, of course, now Gabon. And I don't think that's the end. Many of them are going to go the same way, because when the military sees that there is so much, it's like you are just puppet to the French government, and they are making the people. And even if you are a slave, someday you have to. I remember one of my books is titled "It's Time to Rebel." Although I talked about the spiritual aspect of where the devil keeps people in slavery and you are in captivity, he's doing whatever he wants with you. A time comes when you rebel against the enemy's oppression, slavery, and come to the point where you are able to accept God's grace, God's gift of salvation, of redemption, and freedom to free yourself and to get off the slavery of the enemy. If you don't rebel, guess what? You could remain in slavery forever, all your life. So when you push people to the wall, they have to fight back. For instance, in Gabon, Gabon, where the coup just happened, the president has been in office since 2009 after his father died. His father was in office for 47 or 42 years. So that family has been in office for a combined 58 years of their 60 or 60-something years of independence. Why wouldn't somebody overthrow them? I mean, that's not democracy. People can that's democracy. And a country like Nigeria have no moral right. Nigeria's president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and also ECOWAS, who also has ECOWAS, has no moral right to challenge those who overthrow government in their country, because he came in an illegal way. He stole the mandate. The mandate of the people is not Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He stole the mandate. He rigged, he bribed his way through, he killed, people were killed. These things videos are all out there. We all saw and followed and knew what happened. So he has lost the moral right to even challenge or to question or to say, oh, you can't do that. What the military guys have done in Mali, in Gabon, in Chad, Chad had theirs a longer time ago. In Niger especially now, the Nigerian president has no moral right, has no authority to challenge them, because he has done even worse. They didn't kill people, they just took over power. But Bola Ahmed Tinubu, his boys, he killed, he instructed people to snatch the balls, run away with it, kill if possible, for him to be president. With all the manipulations that happen, we are hoping that the Presidential Election Tribunal will do justice. But if that doesn't happen, listen, if the military boys decide to say, hey, you know what, we are taking over because this is not right, how will you blame them? Because that was exactly what happened in Gabon. The military boys have watched how the election was rigged and everything, stolen, and he was declared winner I think maybe they changed the constitution also for him to run as a for a third term, and their tenure lasts either 5 or 7 years. So is that what you call democracy? When you manipulate, you steal, you rob, just in the name of having? No, I don't think that's the brand of democracy that Africa needs. And I don't think that anybody that got his power illegally, illegitimately, has any moral right to even lecture anybody about rule of law. So as we begin to round up, I just want to say that all of this playing out with Brics, we have no way of knowing how it will end. But we just, you can look at antecedent things that has happened in history, and you can make conclusions, you can make assumptions, but only God knows the future and what's going to happen. But you see, in all of this, the bigger picture is this: the coming of Christ is at hand. And while we draw closer, Jesus already has given us a snapshot of what's going to happen. He says, nation will arise against nation. There will be wars and rumors of war. We can't pray these things away. There will be earthquake. All of these things, as they happen, even if we pray for world peace and pray to the kingdom come, the words of Jesus must come to pass. We can't pray it away. That is why we pray and hope for world peace, we can expect that war and rumors of war will keep happening as the coming of Christ draws closer. Nations will rise against nation. These are part of what the Bible says will happen. We can't wish it away. We can't pray it away. So all of this, why Brics try to provide an alternative to the unipolar world order. Now, in this multipolar world, we don't know how this will work out. China, Russia, India, are they going to be good bedmates, strange bedmates? Are they going to be able to put aside their differences for a long time? And Iran and Saudi, some of these people have differences already, but by themselves. Saudi and Iran don't see eye to eye. India and China also often have their issues, and other nations that will be joining eventually. So you will see that these may be strange bedmates, but they may put aside their differences to be able to work together to provide an alternative. And you see, the coups in Africa is primarily because they are now seeing an alternative. So most of them are seeing Russia as a new partner, an alternative to the French colonial masters who have exploited them for years. And the fact that Russia is in war with Europe, and the fact that Russia sees Europe as trying to use Africa as an alternative to getting energy where they fail to get from him, Russia's mission is now to go, make sure that African government, the new ones especially, kick out France and kick out most of the Western powers. It's already happening. They've kicked France out in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and Niger now. And that's already, if you follow world news, you will know that is what's happening right now. They are trying to, France have refused to leave their embassy, the military, but the Niger government and the people have threatened that they are going to kick them out by force if need be. They've called down cut power and water to the embassy. Now, at the end of the day, you see that the people have the final say. You can't, as a world power, as a colonial master and whatever, you can't come and impose yourself, impose your authority and insist that this was going to happen. No. They are a sovereign nation. What's best for them should be determined by them. You can come as a partner, not as is a colonial master. That was in the past. So now Russia is providing serious backup, economic and military. If you don't know, there was a recent Russia-Africa summit that happened recently. And that is all part of Russia's inroad to Africa, which at the end of the day is going to end up making the West, Paris, France especially, to be kicked out and to be losing a lot of ground. So maybe Russia may be the new partner for Africa in a lot of ways. And there are maybe many of these countries, we may be seeing more coups whereby they're going to say to the West, we don't need you anymore. Oh, welcome Russia. Now, how all this plays out, we don't know. But we are hoping for the best. So I just wanted to share some of this to let you know, for those of you who maybe you've been hearing about Brics, you don't know what it is or how it plays out in world economy, in world politics, and also how it's even intertwined with end times. And as we await the coming of Christ. But I believe we as Christians, believers, even as ministers, we should be in the know. We shouldn't bury our head under the sound like the ostrich and pretend that all is well. Oh, I don't really care what happens. No, we need to care. We need to know. We need to be aware of what's happening in our world. That's why I bring this global politics edition to our TV network. So I'm hoping that you have had some insights, and there are discussions. There is always different views, opinions. You are also right to hold whatever opinion. You may disagree with some of the analysis I've given or some of the videos you've watched, but whatever it is, hey, it's a free world. You are free to hold your opinion, but in any case, let's see how it goes, and we pray for the best and for the peace of the world. And I believe that God has the final say in all that happens in the world affairs. God has the final say. God is going to come. His end time plan for humanity, for mankind, is at play, and is going to play out no matter what. Even these nations and world leaders, many times they will actually be acting out the script that God himself has put in place, even without them knowing it. So we should rest and trust in the fact that God our Father, he has the final say. He knows what we can't give him a breaking news. Everything that is happening, God is aware. It's not a surprise to him. But I believe personally that all things is still going to play into the overall scheme of God and his end time plan for us, for humanity, and for us as believers. So this all means that we should get closer to God, stay more connected with our God, be prepared, because all these are pointing to one fact or point, that the coming of Christ is getting closer. We don't know when and how, and we don't know how close it is, but the world affairs tells us that he's almost at the door. That means we should be ready and we should be prayerful, because Jesus is coming soon someday. Well, I hope you've been enlightened, blessed, and inspired by today's edition on the Brics. So join me next week in another edition as I talk about or bring to you another interesting nation that we'll be talking about in global politics today. Focus on whatever we'll be focusing on next week. So find out. So, well, thank you so much for your time. Please do share this video. Let it be a blessing to somebody. Let it open the eye of someone else. And I will hope to see you again next week. Remember, we do have our online Persistent Works online prayer that comes every day, daily, Monday to Friday. So do join me Monday to Friday. And also, if you have not followed my book series, I do have Persistent Works book series that comes every Tuesday. I talk about my books. So don't miss out on that too. If you miss out on any of those, you can always watch on video on demand session of our website, of our app, and on Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, or you can just scroll down my social media page and you can find and watch them. Now, on every Thursday, I do have guests that I invite to talk about their work with God and their experience, their success, and how we can glean from their experience. So don't miss every Thursday. Interesting guests I do have. They will be a blessing to you. Well, let me invite you to download our app. If you have not downloaded our Persistent Works app, you are missing out a lot. Please download our app. My goal is to have 100,000 downloads. We have over 12,000 so far. We still have a long way to go, but before the end of this year, I'm trusting God will get there. So help us get there. Now, if you have Roku, download or add us as your favorite channel so that when you're on the TV, you can.
We hope you've been blessed by today's TV broadcast. Join us again for our next TV broadcast. If you have a testimony of how you've been blessed, please let us know. Send us an email at persistenceworkstv@yahoo.com. Please support our TV network with your donation to help us reach the nations with the gospel. You can give through PayPal, Zelle, Cash App, or online at www.persistenceworks.tv. You can make your checks payable to Vincent Paul Ministries International at 11829 Glen Evans Lane, El Paso, Texas 79936, USA. Attention, pastors and bishops. If you want to air your church or ministry program on Persistence Works TV network, or you want to promote your product or services, contact us today. Send us an email at persistenceworkstv@yahoo.com. Download our Persistence Works TV network app in the App Store or Google Play Store. Also, add us and watch us on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. Read our Persistence Works magazine and enjoy great content. Simply visit the settings page of our Persistence Works TV network app, click on the button to read the electronic edition of the magazine. To order the print, ebook, or audiobook editions of our Persistence Works book series, visit the settings page of our Persistence Works TV network app. Follow Bishop Colonel Paul Vincent across his social media platforms: Facebook, X, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Truth Social. For more information about PWTN, visit www.persistenceworks.tv.
Inspiration and motivation to reach your dreams in life? Are you trying to overcome discouragement? Do you desire a deeper spiritual walk with God? Do you question your destiny? Then the Persistence Works book series by the prolific author and international speaker Dr. Vincent N. Paul is written for you and is now available in paperback, audiobook, and ebook. Order today by calling 866-909-2665 or go online, persistenceworks.com.
If you need that salvation, if you need that forgiveness, you can receive it tonight. Shout hallelujah.
The anointing breaks the yoke. Hear Dr. Paul N. Vincent preach the anointed word of God that changes lives and brings salvation, healing, and deliverance. Invite him to minister in your church, conference, or crusade. Also read his life-changing books in the Persistent Works series. For more information about inviting Dr. Vincent to minister or to order his books, visit VincentPaulMinistriesInternational.com.
Dr. Paul N. Vincent, internationally known author and preacher, invites you to his annual Persistence Works Holy Land Tour in October and April. These memorable trips throughout Israel include visiting historical sites in Jerusalem, Nazareth, and Bethlehem, as well as the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River, and many more. Your travel package includes round-trip airfare from Houston, Texas, and Lagos, Nigeria to Tel Aviv, first-class hotels, 2 meals a day, air-conditioned buses, and Israeli Ministry of Tourism approved English-speaking guides. For more and to register, visit VincentPaulTours.com today.
For more information about PWTN, visit www.persistenceworks.tv.